Blog Talk Radio.
Namaste, everyone. Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio on December 10th, 2014. This is your host, Andrew Fisher, broadcasting every Wednesday from the suburbs of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to expose the true and false nature of reality for what it is and what it isn't. Today's episode Mary Rodwell, UFOs, ET Contact, and Consciousness Shift. Mary Rodwell, a guest from Down Under, first guest from Down Under since George Kavaslis, who, as many of you know, is one of my frequently used sources of information on this show. Mary is a former nurse, midwife, and health educator who is currently the founder and principal of Australian Close Encounters Resource Network, ACERN for short. Mary has worked in private practice as a professional counselor, hypnotherapist, metaphysical teacher, researcher, author, Reiki Master, and international speaker. ACERN's primary role is to offer professional counseling support, hypnotherapy, and information to individuals and their families with anomalous paranormal experiences, particularly specializing in abduction-contact experiences. Hang on, folks. Let me just check Skype here. Oh, that's Mary. I think she's going to call the number soon. Mary is recognized internationally as one of Australia's leading researchers in the UFO and Contact phenomenon. She's the author of Awakening, How Extraterrestrial Contact Can Transform Your Life, and producer of EBE, Extra Biological Entity. That stands for award-winning documentaries, Expressions of ET Contact, a visual blueprint from 2000, and Expressions of ET Contact, a communication and healing blueprint from 2004. We will first start. I have some guests here in the chat room. Glad to see you. Deborah Han and Sean Cohen is here. I, of course, expect Sean to be here because I have a ET guest on, and Sean would love a guest like that. But first, we are going to start with the news, courtesy of Alex Jones and Company at InfoWars. First article, Weird Government Emergency Alerts Panic Americans. Pure incompetence or something more sinister? Yeah, government alert, an emergency alert. Probably just to condition and acclimate the public to an Orwellian state where the government will generally, how do I say this, stall your life and hinder your life and cause little blips in your life with messages and all, just to acclimate you to the Orwellian state. George Orwell knew well, 1984, fiction under the truth under the guise of fiction. Next article, lawsuit. Cops confiscate guns from home after false arrest. The police refuse to return guns despite dropping all charges nearly 4 months ago. Yes, why won't the cops return the guns? Because police are the biggest gang in town. They'll take the guns if they can. And I hope he wins this lawsuit. Cops are supposed to care about people's right to bear arms, and that doesn't include stealing guns. You steal guns, you don't care about people's right to bear arms. All right, next article. Nazi-designed torture instrumental for maintenance of CIA's terror war charade. The CIA adopted Nazi and communist torture techniques. Well, no surprise there. George Bush, Father George Bush, was the head of the CIA before becoming president, and his father Prescott Bush was an aide to Adolf Hitler. So, of course, the CIA and the Nazis are closely connected there. They'll torture a lot of people, those CIA assholes will. Next article. It's now illegal in Illinois to film cops. All right, I'll get back to that in a moment. I am in line on this call. Okay, I believe I see you there, Mary, if that is your number, 617, and the rest of it. I will finish the news no later than 10 after the hour. It'll probably be sooner than that, by the way. I said it's now illegal in Illinois to film police or any government officials for that matter. Well, it's not illegal. It's against public policy, and it's a public policy that the government does not have authority to pass. You have the right to film your public servants just like your public servants have the right to film you. In Illinois, they come down hard on people who film the police, arrest them even though it was illegal, and now it's illegal even though it's not illegal because it's public policy, like I just said. But people disobey this law, and cops act like you understand that this is an illegal law that the government does not have authority to pass, and don't act like you don't. Next article, watch what happened when two thugs started a gunfight with a 74-year-old woman. The neighbor blames store owner for defending herself against robbers. Is it in the UK? Sean Cohen might know this. People get arrested for defending themselves. That's on record. And in America, we have the right to bear arms. That's not supposed to happen. A 74-year-old woman battling two thugs. Well, the adrenaline rush will make it possible for her to overpower them if she had to, even at that age. It's amazing what the adrenaline rush can do. Next article. College president criticized for saying all lives matter. Activists insist protests not about police violence, but race-based political agenda. Yeah, this whole thing about all these murders, the police murders of Mike Brown, Trayvon Martin, and this Gardner, I think his name was Gardner, in New York for selling untaxed cigarettes. They're going to use this to start race war, like cops being racist against black people, and hoping to start a divide and conquer thing there. And there's supposed to be a lot of activities this Saturday. Maybe I'll go to it, like the one in D.C., with which Al Sharpton, hatchet man for the New World Order, is doing. Claims to be a civil rights activist, but he'll get a race war started if he wanted to, because that's what his job is, in a sense. And well, he'll be leading that one in D.C. I suppose I could go to that. It is a march against police violence, and I could go there for the police violence aspect, even though I don't like Al Sharpton. Well, I don't know, I'd be a bad fit there, because I'd probably expose Al Sharpton as a fraud, and everybody was like, dude, this is not the place for this. But a lot of activities around the country, especially D.C. and New York, will be going on because of these white police killing black people for either justified or absurd reasons. Our next article, Fox News talking head, America tortures because we're awesome. Obama says shocking details in Senate report belong in the past. Yeah, you're still doing it, so it's not something that's from the past. It's, I said earlier, the CIA tortures a lot. Case in point. Last article here. Kentucky residents complain of low-flying military choppers during government alert. Locals flood Sheriff's Department with complaints after a prepare for action warning sent to cell phones. Yes, it's another sign of government trying to acclimate people to the military police state that the New World Order wants to impose, but won't be able to impose because we are on a positive timeline. Definitely talk about this in there. We're on a positive timeline where there is no more I win, you lose. It's now we're going to get closer and closer to ascension, if ascension is the right word for me to be using there, and we'll talk about that too, 2017 and all, and and all the rest of it there. But one more thing I want to point out before getting Mary on the show here. Donnie Gilson, my one of my previous guests from 2 weeks ago, I got a text on Facebook from Jake Montoya saying that Donnie is a fraud. I sent Donnie Jake's message, and Donnie told me this Jake Montoya guy, he's been stalking me. And Jake did leave some comments on my YouTube channel with Donnie Gilson, with the interview with Donnie Gilson. And I wanted to leave them up there because I responded to them to say that I know you're a fraud. Stop stalking Donnie and hassling me about it. And, well, Donnie told me I don't want them up there. Please remove them. And out of respect, I did that. But they're going to try to file a case against this guy. I'm with Donnie all the way. If he decides to go forward with this case, this lawsuit against Jake Montoya, this stalker, he went on Alfred Weber's show and told him all about this. And, well, hopefully Alfred will help along with that. And, well, really shouldn't dwell on that too much. Just let me get a quick drink here, and then I'll let Mary on. Okay. Mary, 617-497-47, and the rest of it. Is that you?
It is indeed. Hello.
How you doing, Mary? How you doing from down under?
I'm doing very well from down under. It's very hot down here.
It's very hot. Well, it is. Well, technically, it's the springtime there because you're in the southern hemisphere. It's the spring. We're still in the fall, and you're lucky down there. You don't have to deal with Fukushima radiation in the southern hemisphere. Although we'll be talking about Fukushima a little later in this interview because it does have a lot to do with your work, as Alfred has told me when I was interviewing him. And I guess we'll start off with this whole thing about letting us know what ACERN is, because maybe after you introduce me and the rest of your audience to that, you'll set the tone for what the rest of this interview will be about.
Well, ACERN is the Australian Close Encounter Resource Network, which primarily helps people who are having encounters of whatever way they understand them, whether they see them as abductions or contact, or they see themselves as someone we call the star seed or star kid, and even if it's someone who believes they're a hybrid or even a walk-in, any of those kinds of terms, having anomalous experiences where they are concerned, don't understand, trying to get someone to listen who isn't going to judge them, and that really is what ACERN is for. It's a professional resource to offer a listening, non-judgmental ear with information and support as they need it.
Thanks. And you work as a counselor and hypnotherapist. Why don't you let us know what kind of hypnotherapy seems to work best with the people that see you at ACERN? What's the best style, the best technique?
Well, that's a very complex one. I mean, there are different ways and different levels of hypnosis, and for some people that go to standard hypnosis, stopping smoking or something like that, that obviously isn't where I go. For lots of people that come to me, they want to understand what's happened, and if their conscious mind may give them flashbacks or they sense something's happened, they've seen strange lights in the sky and experienced what we call missing time, where the journey should have only taken them maybe an hour and it's taken them 3. They've seen some lights, they feel very strange afterwards. They're aware something's happened, but they don't have a recall of it. So the hypnosis that I do is to assist them to find from their subconscious what actually happened in that missing time. But they also come for a lot of other reasons. If they're writing strange scripts or having other interactions with different beings, they want to have some understanding, and not always our conscious mind will give us the information, whereas our subconscious is really like a tape recorder. It records everything that we experience, even those memories that we can't recall consciously. So my way of working is to assist them to go to that place in a safe way, in a way where they feel supported, to help them understand what it is that's happened, not only just the scenario, which is only part of the work. You have to actually help them gain some understanding. If they see themselves, for example, having a procedure done, like anyone, you want to know what that procedure is for, and it's not enough to just know the procedure happened. So my work is about helping them gain that understanding.
Thanks. And it says you're also a Reiki Master here. Now, when it comes to Reiki, they say the key is just with your intent. Your intent is to heal them, and you should do well, but at the same time, you do need to practice it. And I have been trying to look into some websites that teach Reiki and how to do it yourself, learn it yourself. I like to be able to do it myself. So in regards to Reiki, why don't you tell us the best style, the best technique?
Well, in terms of Reiki, I just see that as one of many models of healing. And to be blunt, Andrew, as far as I'm concerned, everyone can heal if they so have the desire and the wish to. And for some people to have a model to work from, such as Reiki, is one way of gaining confidence in working with energy. And it really is just about that. It's about recognizing energy and working with energy and using yourself as a conduit for the energy that is available and around us. And it's all about intent. So the more that you have a positive intent to bring in that frequency, you can actually start to recognize what energy feels like between your own hands. For some, using different symbols enhances that energy and magnifies it. But for a lot of people, it's a natural thing. They don't necessarily need to have a protocol. But if you do to gain confidence, then Reiki is one of many now that are on offer.
Thanks. And in regards to the anomalous paranormal experiences, we'll get to the abduction-contact ones. Well, I'm sure this would also be contact in a sense, but what are some paranormal experiences that would fall out of the abduction and contact experience that you sometimes might encounter?
That's an interesting question, and it's a difficult one, because what I've come to understand and what I've discovered with many people in the spiritual fields, metaphysical fields, for example, or New Age, is that sometimes what is going on is that we will see things through our own personal lens and belief system. So, for example, if somebody believes they're contacting their guides, they may be a clairvoyant or a medium, for example. Their guide they may see as angelic, or they may see them as as a spirit that's moved on or an ascended master. My understanding now is that actually many of the spirits or the so-called that they've interpreted as an ascended master, as an angel, could just as well be interpreted as a light being, for example, or a higher intelligence that is interacting with us. So it's actually all in the same basket. I think the only problem is that we are, as humans, are inclined to want to separate things out and say, well, this is this and that's spiritual, but this is ET. Well, in fact, it's all spiritual. We are interacting in a multidimensional realm, and there are all types of beings, from extraterrestrial, interdimensional, extra-dimensional, I believe, even visitors from the past or the future. So in that sense, you can't really separate it out when you have an understanding of the greater paradigm. And it really just depends on the lens that you want to perceive your particular reality. And if you're very religious, then you may see some of those loving intelligences as Jesus or Mary or another deity, if you like.
Thank you. Before we get into talking about abduction and contact, since you're from Australia, I might as well discuss a couple things about that place that are kind of interesting. Andrew Bartzis, Akashic Records reader, has talked about how Australia is kind of unique in that it's a floating island that can leave the planet and seat itself on another planet, just land there and intertwine with the planet to alter it in some ways. I can't remember exactly what he said, but I talked to George Kavassos about that. He said, well, I think all the continents can do that. I'm not exactly sure why Andrew Bartzis would say Australia is special, but other than that, he also talked about how the Aborigines of George Kavassos did this, by the way, talked about this. The Aborigines of Australia, they're the only humans that have entirely evolved on this planet. They do not have any extraterrestrial genetic links. Well, maybe there could be some debate there because we're all star seeds, but they evolved entirely on this planet. If you know what he's talking about, could you maybe elaborate on what he's talking about there with the Aborigines and also Australia being a floating island that can float through space and go on other planets?
Well, I can't give any information on that because it's not something that's been anything that I've come across, to be honest, so I can't really comment. What I will say about the Aborigines is I know that they're having interactions with various beings that we call either the Greys or the Mantid. In fact, the Mantid beings that many people see, the Aborigines call the Mamu, and obviously the Greys they often talk about and have done pictures about are actually called the Wandjina. So there is no doubt that these intelligences coming from space visit the Aborigines. So it seems rather interesting that there could be a hypothesis that they are the original ones. And look, it's quite possible. I think, unfortunately, none of us have enough information to actually say that categorically, although I do know some researchers do believe that life actually did originate in Australia rather than Africa, and I've met a couple of researchers that are looking at all the Egyptian hieroglyphs that are in Australia that people generally don't know about. Not only were the Phoenicians visitors, but also the Egyptians. And in fact, Tutankhamun, actually some of the gold that he has on Tutankhamun's tomb actually comes from from Gympie, which is about 3 hours south here where the Gympie Pyramid is. So they've been visiting, but the interesting thing is it's not like they were coming from Egypt to actually, if you like, enlighten the Aborigines. They came here, these researchers are suggesting, they actually came here to learn from the Aborigines, not the other way round, which is a complete turnaround for most people. And these particular researchers that have, discussed this are actually talking about them actually being the originals, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they haven't had some input biologically, because they certainly know of all these different intelligences that we're discussing, from the Greys to the Mantid to these other different beings. And a lot of their drawings that I've even got paintings which show elders, Aboriginal elders, talking to greys and elders being taken up on the craft. So certainly there's been an interaction which suggests there may be more going on, but I can't categorically say one way or another. I don't honestly think anyone can.
Okay, let's stay with the subject of the greys and the mantids for a moment, because there is no truly evil or benevolent ET race. There's good greys and good mantids and bad mantids. I mean, when it comes to bad greys, you got the greys from Orion, the Zeta Reticuli greys, and there's many ones that are used for benevolent reasons, and it's kind of a misconception to look at all greys as like a cross between a plant and a robot, as some people say. There's certain greys like the Serpo greys that are very intelligent. Ray Kusalanich told me about that. And while a lot of people think of the insectoid extraterrestrials like the mantids as well, you think like mantis species. Mantis is considered a very enchanted creature. People would think that would be a benevolent race of extraterrestrial. But I remember Alfred Weber talking about how on the planet Mars, in the polar regions of Mars, the reptilians and mantids, these are malevolent reptilians and mantids, have bases there of operation to, I think, take over Mars. And you don't hear much about mantid involvement on planet Earth, but I'll let you maybe elaborate on that. Could you tell us what you know and don't know about greys and mantid species, both good and bad, and what they do?
Well, to encapsulate my latest understanding with about almost 3,000 cases now, and I go on their testimony rather than, the research that we get or the information we get from whistleblowers, I always consider is already coloured. So, I'm a little bit in askance of whistleblower material because we don't know for sure just how much of that is accurate or not. But from, the individuals that have got no axe to grind, if you like, I was told by one lady that she was aware of about 165 species of grey. So to actually pick a few out and say they're this or that actually is a very, very limited picture. And certainly there do seem to be those that are less, are more worker-like and more robotic than some others that are highly evolved and highly aware. And my response to people who have experiences is once they get rid of the mantle of fear is to actually see what they feel from a particular being that they're interacting with, a grey, whichever kind of grey it might be. What is their feeling? Because I think that's more of an accurate way of discerning the intent than judging them from what other people say. Because if there's that many species and maybe even more, we can't just categorize them all as one or another or a mix of either. It's like taking one human being off the planet and saying they represent all humans. It's a nonsense. With the Mamu or the mantis beings, the Hosa call the mantis beings the one who teaches. So they see the mantis being as an intelligent species that actually assists and helps them. From my experience and working with people that have had experiences with these mantid beings, for example, and also I will say the Aborigines say a similar thing about the mantid beings, which, as I say, they call them the Mamu. They don't seem to have a negative connotation to them either. They see them as teachers. And from my understanding, they're also master geneticists, which is why they are involved in a lot of the genetic manipulation, I think, of our species to actually create different programs, which I think is going on at the planet right now. So my sense is there may very well be renegade groups or other groups that have their own agenda. And my concern is that we're very good at looking at trying to judge through information from other people, limited information, and quite honestly, all we can do at the moment is ask every individual who has an interaction with them, what is their sense or feeling about the being that they're interacting with, which is probably more accurate than a lot of the information or disinformation that's out there at the moment. Primarily, certainly, the Mamus seem to have more of a positive profile, if you like, than certainly the Greys do. But I have known many people have really beautiful and loving interactions with the Greys. and I've had others that have had absolutely terrifying ones. But what I will say is that often our fear gets in the way of understanding what the agenda may be. And often people who've been very fearful have come to me. Once they've gone into the experience and seen what's going on, often their attitude towards the beings will change. It's almost like if you have a 2-year-old child and you take them to the doctor and you say, look, he's a nice man, he's going to make you better. And the doctor gets a damn big needle out and sticks it in the child's backside. The child is going to not want to go back and say he's a horrible man. It may not be till he's 5 or 6 that you can say to him, well, the injection that you had contained medicine that made you better. I know it was painful, but actually it ultimately proved to be something that was helping you get better. And this, I think, is often the case. People remember the trauma, they remember the fear, they actually don't remember the reason why. And part of my work is to help them go and find out the reason why some interaction with these beings has been going on, and to understand it from a level that makes sense to them.
Thanks. Let's go down the line a little bit with different species of ETs that come up in your work. How about the reptilians? Andrew Bartzis has said there are 18 species of reptilians influencing reality here on Earth, and only one is malevolent. Although he did make it clear when I asked him about this that one malevolent species of reptilian, which comes from Alpha Draconis, it has actually branched off into clone species that come from Hydra, Sirius B, and I think some from Orion. So why don't you tell us what what the people that you deal with have said about reptilian aliens, both good and bad, and what their agenda is?
Well, at the moment, what information I have, and remember, this is changing all the time. You know, there's no mandate with any of this because we don't know what the government knows, or the covert governments know of these species. I was told by one lady that were 3 different types. 2 were benevolent, 1 was not, and that's just her understanding. So there is no doubt there are some that are extremely self-serving, as I call it. What people do need to also know is that there is information to suggest that the governments have cloned both greys and some reptilian types. And these they work with in underground bases, and they are programmed life forms. So they're not actually extraterrestrial in origin. They are programmed, cloned life forms. And often the people that are taken to these bases will see these particular types, which are literally programmed by our own military. But having said that, there are some that definitely are interacting from an extraterrestrial perspective as well, so I believe, that are also working with the military, and some of the greys or different types of grey and reptilians as well. I have to tell you that I meet people, and I've worked with people that consider themselves hybrids, a hybrid human reptilian, and they don't see that they are in any way bad, and they just say, look, we actually are trying to take care of the planet because humans don't. Humans are destroying the planet, and we're actually here trying to help. And this was one beautiful lady, or I'll say beautiful, she was actually physically very beautiful, who actually wanted to understand more of her reptilian self because she actually didn't particularly like her human form. So, this is, a bit of an extreme to what people understand. I think, again, we've got to be very careful about judgment because you can't make judgments on limited information. And at the moment, most of us are working on very, very limited information, and all we can go on is what people's experiences are and how they feel and understand from their own intuitive side what these particular beings are that they interact with. And sometimes the agendas may be darker than we realize, or they actually may have an ultimate positive content. So, the jury's open, I think, with all of the ways that we are actually at the moment trying to interpret these different intelligences that are visiting and interacting with us.
Thank you. How about the Nordic type species, blonde-haired, blue-eyed? That's another species that many people seem fascinated with. The Nordic aliens of Billy Meyer, for example, the Pleasurean from the Pleiades. Billy Meyer apparently is genuine. And there's other species of Nordic, like the Orion Nordics, that are also the Aryans that have interbred with the Reptilians. David Icke in his books talks about how the Aryan Nordic species interbred with the Reptilians. And George Cavazos told me that the Aryans are the Orion Nordics, which actually are reptilian. They have an angelic quality, though, hence the name Nordic. They do not have a particularly good agenda for humanity. So in regards to Nordic species from all over the universe, not just the Pleiadian Nordics, but other Nordics, what have your contacts and people that you work with told you?
And again, this is a very complex question in the sense that, yes, many people interact with what appear to be humanoid species, and they have lots of different names depending on the individual you talk to and how they choose to understand them. If they're very spiritual, they may even see them as ascended beings of some kind or whatever. So, you know, I've got absolutely no doubt that we also have extraterrestrial humanoids wandering around on this planet. And Bob Dean, you know, he talks about the fact that there's very likely some even potentially in the White House, although I very much doubt it given what happens there. But anyway, what I do believe is that there are those embodied physical humanoid species on this planet for sure that are keeping an eye, wandering around, checking out, reporting back, all of that kind of thing. I'm pretty certain that's what goes on. There are some that do physically interact with various people who've had interactions with them and have told me about the humanoids. Generally, the consensus is, as far as I can understand, that is they have a positive, if you like, benevolent role, most of them certainly. But again, you know, that's what is conveyed. It's really hard to know for sure because we can't know for sure. We can't know with any of this other than what we feel or what we discern from that other level. But with all the humanoids, there are some that a young lady who I've worked with in Australia says that there are some that she calls the Homo novice, which she reckons there's 150,000 of those. They are humanoid and they are very much more advanced than us that are wandering our planet and are, again, trying to assist with this awakening of humanity. That's their role, and they've come here to help us move to another level, Homo noeticus, which he says the children from 2000 upwards are the Homo noeticus higher programs or more advanced programs of humans, if you like. And then we've got all these other ones, the lion beings, cat beings, the crystalline beings, energy beings, light beings. And what we have to put in the mix is many of them can show you whatever form they choose to. So, you know, when we're starting to judge by form and image, we have to be very, very careful because for many of them, it's not a problem to let you see what they want you to see, because they can manipulate the way that you see things and the way you understand things until you're ready maybe to see them in their form, which may be very, very disturbing or different to how you would, want to assess them. I mean, the trouble is with humans, and we know that we judge people by how they dress, what color their skin is, how they speak, what their background is. All of those things are the way we judge people, and we've really got to get over that and realize that often the most beautiful person from the outside may have a very dark heart, and the most less than beautiful person, image-wise, may actually be the most wonderful, beautiful soul inside imaginable. So I think this is really a lesson in stopping to judge the book by its cover, if that makes sense.
That's very good advice indeed, because aliens can show a form that's not what they truly are. By the way, we have a couple callers. What the hell? I might as well take these callers. Can only take two, though, and then I want to switch to another subject here. But first, it just says 111-111-1111. If you know who you are on the air. Welcome. 111. Somebody say something.
Yeah, hi. How are you today?
Oh, how you doing? What's your name? Where are you from?
Yeah, I'm calling from Florida. I was on mute, so it took me a minute to go off mute. Yeah. My name is Marie, and I just wanted to say great show. I'm enjoying the topic. And I do agree with what the lady was stating about the judging, the labeling on people, you see, and I have found run into so many beautiful people, beautiful souls, by me passing all the exterior thing and just going and talking to someone and getting to know who they are, and come to find out they're small, they have another lot of knowledge, and most of them have wisdom, people that you would least think of, especially those that are homeless in the streets. They are the kind of people that really, if you get into a conversation with them, they really know where you're coming from and where you're at, with that. So I would say that these people are the least superficial. They're real. They're real. So, and that is all. Yeah, that is what I wanted to add.
Any question for Mary? Any question for Mary?
I wanted to. Mary, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. You were talking about the different type of people that are here or already here, that came here from other planets, like other civilization. What is it that you mean exactly by that? Can you talk a little bit more about that, please? I appreciate it.
Sorry, I'm not sure of the question.
Talking about other civilization, other form, that came here, like, people from other places. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I've mentioned a few, but I suspect there are many other forms, and I've got a number of those with experiences that have drawn many different types with different shaped heads that are coming from many other parts of the galaxies and universes. I've even had people come who believe they've been sent from these places and embodied in human form to come and help this planet evolve. And young children that have also said, as one 10-year-old told me, he came through a portal in the sun, but his origins obviously are a great distance away, and we don't have names for where he comes from. So if that's the case, then we live in an amazingly matrix of a multi-universe where we are being visited from perhaps other dimensions, other places that we can't even conceive of, and many other different forms. And for some of those visitors, they've actually decided to come in human form. So actually your next door neighbor could very well be an extraterrestrial, but has decided to come in as human this time.
Yeah, and I do agree with you. Yeah, I agree with that, because I do know of this, and also, souls are coming here that are, taking over, existing human bodies as well, people that already exist, and maybe the existing soul, are tired or they want to exit out, and I know these new souls are taking over, and it can be quite a challenge, because, if you're a new soul that has taken residence into a 30 or 40-year-old body of a person, it could be quite hard to get adjusted to that, especially when you just, boom, you're like an instant family, people, so, and you can't really tell anybody that. So, yeah, I know quite of these. I've run into them as well, like other souls that have just got here, and like they know who I am and I know who they are, so, yeah. But that's all I wanted to say. I will continue listening to the show, and I want to thank you so much, Mary, for your knowledge and wisdom and sharing this with us. I appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you for calling in.
Thank you.
Call anytime. Take care now.
Yeah. Okay.
Later. All right, one more. Oh, the call I was about to go to decided to hang up as soon as I'm going to go to it. Okay, never mind then. I guess Mary will continue on with the show in that case. You're welcome to call in again, caller, if you want to. I'll take your call as soon as you get up after this question, though. But I guess let's talk specifically about abductions, because the word abduction, it has a negative connotation to it, but I suppose you could say you've been abducted by benevolent extraterrestrials. And let's talk about the one that Alfred Weber has talked about, and then we'll maybe get into a broad discussion of what abductions are like. But the specific ones that Alfred's referenced often is how, well, maybe you can clarify for me on this. Indigo children, crystal children, star children, they're not all the same. There's some differences there, but you've talked about how maybe one of those species, or maybe all of them, are being abducted, so to speak, by benevolent extraterrestrials who are giving them information, talking about a consciousness shift in 2017 that's approaching, and a lot of other people are corroborating on that. Could you perhaps elaborate on that whole issue?
I think that you're quite right in saying that, the word abduction has been, bandied about for many, many years, and gives everybody the idea that everyone is taken against their will. And there is certainly a percentage of those that definitely feel this is the case, and they've got no choice in the matter. And, that's something that is very real for them and very, very traumatic, although for many of them, the fear is more about the unknown and not understanding enough about what's going on for them. And that's sort of one thing. And, I've had many of them find out later that this was a contract on some level. And that's one of the things you can ask in hypnosis, whether or not there was a contract and they just have no recall of that. But having said that, a majority of those that I work with, I would say 30% may be in the abduction type scenario where they feel they've been taken and not had any choice in it, for example. About 70% actually feel the complete opposite. They actually struggle with being on planet Earth. They find humans pretty barbaric and actually just want to go home, as they'll say. And they feel that when they're taken to see their family, they're taken to be taught things on the craft, they're taken to have healing procedures, and yes, sometimes genetic material is taken as well. One little boy talked about going up once a year. He actually has conscious memory of this, an 8-year-old, who said that he went up with a couple of school friends. He would be in a kind of capsule where he couldn't move, and he would say he could see blue beings that were observing him, and I said, what was going on? And he said, oh, that's my yearly medical exam. So for him it was quite acceptable that this is what he experienced once a year. So they don't see it as an abduction. They see it as part of them reconnecting with their family and actually having jobs to do and learning things to help this planet. They all feel they've got a mission, a purpose. They've got something to do, like this little boy said that he communicates with animals, and that he's to help humans understand animals and realize that we're all connected. Many of them say they're here to help their family wake up, and they are aware of healing abilities. They're aware that they have other paranormal abilities, and they have something to do. So for them, this isn't an abduction. This is actually reconnecting with their family.
Okay, thanks. We'll get into the Consciousness Shift 2017 thing in just a little bit, but I do have that caller area code 313 back. I'll get you on as soon as I ask this question, which was asked in the chat room before you called back in. A question from Psychic Sean in the chat room. How does God fit into this whole abduction thing, or in general, what your work is connected to? How does God or Source or the Creator or Infinite Consciousness, whatever you want to call it, it's all the same entity. How does God fit into the work that you do with abductions? Can you tell us that?
Oh, I think it's absolutely vital as part of understanding the soul journey, is that, those that ultimately see this as a soul journey, that they've come and embodied into human form to learn and experience being physical for a time, to gain understanding in certain areas, whether it's about compassion, love, limits, or all those kinds of things that we all learn on this planet. They all talk about ultimately going back to the source, which they will articulate as God or the source or a universal consciousness. And a 9-year-old in Northern Europe told me that she calls it Dayland, where the light and the love the angels and the ultra-terrestrial. She means God, because she said that she doesn't see it has a gender. It actually is, as she calls it, an ultra-terrestrial. So she sees it as a consciousness. And for some, they see God as everything around us that is love. So it's really how the person chooses to articulate their understanding of the source or consciousness or what we're all part of. So we've got many names, and I think the trouble is that it's such an all-encompassing kind of concept that most of us with our human brains or our human consciousness really struggle to actually articulate just how we understand it. So I think it's all as you choose to understand it, and it's all, okay. However it fits for you is good for you.
Thanks. And for some reason, area code 313 decided to hang up. I was going to get her on as soon as you finished answering this. But just for the hell of it, I'll ask another question in the chat room here. What are the symptoms of a walk-in where the soul walks in to someone to take them over, so to speak? The symptoms.
Well, thank you, because the lady that we did speak to actually sort of hinted at this, where some souls come in and take over a human form as an older kind of when the human body's older. The walk-in is quite a common one, more common than maybe people realize. And my understanding is that a soul or two souls may contract to share a human body at some point. Some maybe want to still go through a childhood experience, and some want to not bother with the childhood experience but come in as an adult. But one of the most profound stories I heard was a lady who told me she was a walk-in. She's in her 60s now, and she said that she came in a cylindrical craft. She was 9 feet tall, blonde hair, blue eyes, telepathic, didn't eat, and didn't have to eat in the way that we take nourishment, and then found herself in a 3-year-old girl's body. And she had to, for some time, was traumatized because she had to learn how to speak, because before that she was telepathic, and she actually had to learn how to eat. So for her, it took a few years to actually be comfortable with the density of her human body and understand that she had a mission here. And she's one of those, what I call individuals that see themselves as reporting back to their extraterrestrial family about what's going on planet Earth. And she sees herself a little like an undercover agent, if you like, a beautiful soul. She doesn't talk about this publicly in any way, but she says there are some like her around the planet, and I'm very, very aware that she's come here with something to do, and reporting back what it's like to be human. In other words, on all different levels, giving insight to these different intelligences that want to understand what's actually going on this planet and how best to help.
Thanks, Mary. You said earlier that God is the love that's all around us. With that being said, Dolores Cannon, the late Dolores Cannon, another hypnotherapist, has often said that fear is an illusion. And I guess David Icke would agree with that, because he always says infinite love is the only truth. Everything else is illusion. Well, other people would disagree with that and say in this matrix, that's a bad way of looking at it. You can't say fear is an illusion, because in this matrix it's downright real, because duality does exist, although we are on a positive timeline, so it will eventually cease to exist. That's unavoidable, but we are still in duality. So the whole idea of fear being an illusion, do you agree or disagree?
Look, illusions are very real. We're down here having a human experience, and as a human experience, we have a human body. It's painful when somebody pricks us. It's painful when somebody's unkind to us and says awful things or whatever. That's real in a third-dimensional reality, and we are human. So we are experiencing a reality. What we need to understand, however, is that we are being controlled by fear, and that that's sort of the way that we're kept in the box. And what I see going on now is that we are being asked to transcend that level of human reality to a point where we can see it from a bigger picture, so that we can see that a lot of our fears are in fact our own. That we're told to fear death, we're told to fear illness, we're told to fear terrorists, we're told to fear almost the types of food we eat and what have you. So we are actually brought up on fear. So it's a very real energy, and it's one that is very easy to get trapped into. But when you start to, knowledge actually helps with actually looking at fear from a different perspective. And the more that we free ourselves from all those programs that contain us, like fear, we can actually get to a place where we're actually a lot more neutral about a lot of the things that we see around us. We start to understand that that's a controlling mechanism, which is what it is. It's keeping us in the box. One of the very fascinating scientists that I spoke to, who's had experiences with ETs herself and looking at what's actually going on the planet, she said we're separating out into two frequencies on this planet itself. The low-frequency people that are still being allowing themselves on some level or making a choice to remain in that low frequency, whether it's through diet, through the way they live or whatever, and the high-frequency people that are almost having a shamanic, if you like, awakening to the greater reality. And when you go into, if you go down the shamanic route, one of the things a shaman has to do is transcend their human fears. And that's really what I see going on, is that once you realize a lot of things we fear are fears that are third dimensional, that are things that some of them, maybe feel very tangible. Excuse me, I need to just have a quick, that's better. Some of the fears really are illusions in the sense that they've been created. The governments, the way this planet is run is created using fear, and some of those certainly are illusions, that we are going to be got by the terrorists, or, that everything you eat is bad for you, or this kind of thing. You can choose not to buy into that. You can always choose not to take on board the negativity that's around you. That's where the choice is, and that's where you can get rid of a lot of those third-dimensional experiences around fear. I think that our role is to transcend human fears, just like the shaman has to do, face his demons, to realize and to become truly empowered in a multidimensional way, because they have to operate in a multidimensional world. And this is where we're going as a species, I believe, that we're going to realize that a lot of these human things, these human fears that we have, are just fears often of the unknown, fears of our potential, fears that if we don't behave in the human way, in the third dimensional way, something terrible is going to happen to us. And we forget. We're in a planet of forgetting that actually we are eternal. We are eternal beings. We're not going to be in this physical embodiment forever, but that energy survives, and that we continue to explore and evolve in many different forms, just as many in past lives have told me. So you can either choose to be in that fear frequency, which you can make a choice, and it is very real. It is very real for you if you choose to make it so. I call this a virtual reality, but we also have to be aware of the multidimensional part of us that's come here to have a human experience, and we can choose not to buy into a lot of the stuff that's out there in this third dimensional world that holds us back from finding out who we really are.
And the whole issue of why humans are fearful. I mean, as a species, we are paradigmatic in a sense, following paradigms. We are fearful, and I've often said, and I hate to say it, but it is true, that many humans, they're so flat out stupid that they will refuse to believe something shocking or disturbing, even if the evidence shows they have no choice but to believe it. And that's one reason it's so easy for governments to get away with their secrets and conspiracies being exposed, It has been said by some that the reason many humans are like that is because we were genetically engineered to be paradigmatic, fearful, and stupid by extraterrestrials who used us as a slave species and needed to keep us in line more easily, so they genetically engineered us to be paradigmatic, fearful, and stupid. And if you want to learn more about that, you would need to study the books and the work of Zecharia Sitchin and David Icke. But do you believe that there is truth to that, that we were genetically engineered to be that way by ETs who wanted to use us as a slave species?
Oh, I think there's a lot to suggest that Zecharia Sitchin had, was on the ball in terms of the Sumerian text. And whether that's the case, I mean, there's certainly a lot of evidence to suggest that's a possibility. But what I'm seeing is that with all of that is that we are actually evolving despite that. And that although 95% of our DNA is not understood yet and is considered junk DNA, what I'm seeing now and what I'm being told and what I'm learning through my research is that many people, and certainly the children, are being switched on, or their parts of their genome now are being activated. And with that becomes this awareness that we are greater and we have huge amounts of potential. And I think this is what's happening. Over the many, many millennia, we have gradually been evolving into a new, more aware species, and that has been assisted by benevolent species. Bob Dean talks about going up on the craft for 6 weeks in his latter years. I mean, he's now in his 80s. And he said that he understood from the beings he interacted with there that not only has he seen a very wonderful future for us, but we are a collection of 12 different species. So it can't just be the Anunnaki, but many others as well. And when you talk to a little 8-year-old that tells you his genetic family is a mantid being, and that when he dies, he's going back to being a mantid, and when he goes on the craft sometimes, he evaporates into his mantid form. In other words, his essence goes into a mantid form. Then you have to see that this isn't, quite as clear or as black and white as some of the researchers might say. I mean, this 8-year-old is describing something Simon Parkes, a politician in the UK, mentions as well. He talks about the mantid being his family. And when he's on the craft sometimes, he said his essence goes into the mantid form and he helps with the humans. So who are alien, who are human? Because I don't think the soul has too much bother with morphing into whatever container it needs to morph into to have experience. So we've got, we're looking at an us and them scenario from a very human perspective, but I don't think it's actually as clear as that. I think the soul has been many different forms, and we've probably all been greys at some time, or reptilians, or felines, or whatever, and maybe many other forms we can't even imagine. People have seen themselves as crystalline beings, seen themselves as energy in other lifetimes or whatever. So, with all of that matrix, I think that we are trying to understand something very, very complex through the eye of a needle.
Thanks. I'd like to talk about the 2017 consciousness shift right now. Before I do, I'd just like you to clarify something. I believe Alfred has said that the crystal children that you work with have talked about this. Can you maybe clarify what is the difference between a crystal child, an indigo child, and a star child? Or are they the same?
Let's put it like this. I put them under the generic term of star children for a lot of reasons, because I think there are many different programs. One of the programs, the indigos, the crystals, the rainbow children, children of light, the golden children, Homo noeticus is the one that I talk about that I've been told is coming in 2000 without any programs, a lot of these children. They all are different programs, and I will add to that some ones that might be quite disturbing to some people, but I feel it's very valid and something that I'm going to be writing about is the ADHD children, the children that I believe are diagnosed as Asperger's or some types of autism, some types of dyslexia. I think these are new programs, and the reason I say that is that many of them are born to people who've had encounters, and also the parents have told me that their children seem to have abilities, like some of the autistic children, for example, seem to show evidence of being very telepathic. The Asperger's, extremely intelligent, very, very direct. One of the scientists that I speak to talks about them being letter people, and she said that they have, a completely different way of understanding reality, that they even have more nerve sensors at the end of their hands and heightened abilities for hearing and for sight, seeing more range of the colored spectrum, for example. These, I believe, this is evidence, I believe, that we are evolving into a multidimensional species. And the reason they say they're dysfunctional is that you can't socialize them and program them in the way that most of my generation have actually been programmed. And that's the reason for that is that they don't want them programmed into a limited third-dimensional world, that we are becoming more multidimensional in nature. And so the best way to stop any limiting programming is to make it easy to program, as we're doing with our children every day in school. They are all being programmed, and as one 9-year-old said, and all the teachers do is press the keys, that they are programmed out of their light, is the way that she puts it. So I believe there are many different programs, and all of these different children are actually exhibiting certain qualities that are part of our multidimensional nature.
Thanks. And one quick thing about the autism. Is it vaccines that are causing autism, or is it our universal geneticists causing the autism, or is it a combination of both, or are there some autism spectrum disorders that you can equate with vaccines and other ones that, no, they're not vaccine-related, they're universal geneticist-related? Could you maybe talk about that?
I think it might be all of that. And my concern is that we know there are many ways that the ones that know what's going on, the people behind the governments, etc., whatever name you want to give them, from the Illuminati to whatever other names you want to give them, they know these kids are coming in and have known about it for a long time. And their way of limiting their abilities and shutting them down has been, through a range of measures. And one of them is the vaccines, I believe. I believe they are, what's in them now, is horrendous. And anyone, don't take my word for it. Just go and look it up and work it out for yourself and make up your own mind. And they've no doubt affected a lot of children one way or another. And they're bringing in more all the time. We've got fluoride in our water, for example, still going on. And in the toothpaste, for example, that's a neurotoxin. Nobody's ever told that, but it's good for your teeth. So it doesn't matter about the brain, by the way, but the children's teeth will be really good. That's not even now, can I paint your teeth with fluoride? I'm told by my dentist, and I told him what to do with it in very polite terms. The bottom line is we've got all the chemtrails. We've got all these processed foods now with all the different preservatives in them that are making everybody fat, and people don't realize that this is all part of the GMO foods, for example. All these things are harming and damaging our genetics and our ability to wake up. So, it's about people being informed, and certainly don't take my word for it. But if it interests you and you're curious and you'd like to know more, for goodness sake, go on the internet, work it out for yourself and make up your own mind. Don't be a sheepy. Please don't be a sheepy. And thank goodness a lot of people are waking up now.
Well said. By the way, area code 313, you are on the air. Welcome.
Hey, hello.
How you doing? I'm glad to have you here. What's your name? Where are you from?
My name's Dwight. I'm from Detroit.
How you doing?
Hey.
Hey.
I'd like to add something in.
Go ahead.
Yeah. The thing about the programming, I believe that already happened. Before, with most of the people here, it happened before we was like material, in a material body. Spiritually, I think we was programmed before this lifetime, And so, like habits and stuff habits of wanting to program other people. That also come from like past lifetimes, where people want to have control and all these other things like fluoride and poisoning everybody, because it already happened between everybody, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we do make a soul contract before we enter this life as to everything that's going to happen. I mean, even the abductions, they're not abductions. They were planned before we incarnated as a human. Many people would say that. But Mary, you want to respond to our guest caller's statements?
Look, I agree, because I've done a lot of past life work, and one of the interesting things is that when they go through the death sequence of that life, I will often ask them, what was it that they learned in that life? And they would say, well, I learned more about compassion or limits or these kinds of things. And they will talk about how they organize coming into this present incarnation, who their parents, they decide on the parents, on the siblings, on the challenges that they would, if you like, face in this lifetime. And, when it depends on what they want to gain, whether they want to gain more understanding on limits or they want to gain more understanding on what it's like to, be in a war zone, for example, or what it's like to be in a very dysfunctional family or a violent family, for example. Now, a lot of people say, well, why would you choose that? Well, the soul itself is, if you like, choosing to incarnate in a form that enables them to experience. And, the experiences, and often the most painful ones, are the ones where there's the greatest growth. And so, when people say, well, where's the choice in that? The choice is because you've orchestrated your journey, and the choice is your attitude to it once you've incarnated. You can either always see it as a victim, or as you can see it as someone who's saying, that was bloody tough as a child, but through that, I learned about more about compassion, about being there and not doing that myself because of the pain it caused or whatever. So the growth is huge, and as a counsellor, part of my role has been to help people with a perspective that's a lot more healing and a lot more helpful to them than seeing themselves always as a victim of something, but actually seeing that through that there is always a silver lining if they can choose to see it. And that's the same with all these experiences that we have. I truly believe we're all souls coming to boarding school, if you like, and boarding school is human reality, and we don't always like it at boarding school and we want to go home. But at the same time, we know that by being here, the experiences we have are enriching our understanding from a soul perspective. And that's, to me, the only one that makes any sense, certainly to me.
Thanks, Mary. Anything else, caller?
I just thought it was something I was thinking of, just kind of forget while I was listening. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you're welcome to call in any time, so take care now.
All right.
Take care.
Right. Take care. Well, Mary, let's get back to this whole abduction thing about the star children. You like to call them star children, you say, regardless of what label people give them. Excuse my sore throat. I got a little bit of a sore throat, so you might hear me coughing a bit here. But anyway, the 2017 consciousness shift, you said that they are being fed that information. I mean, is it actually being implanted in their DNA, some information? I mean, are the extraterrestrials that are abducting the star children, are they actually tampering with their DNA to speed up the process of Earth's ascension into the 2017 time period, or are they just telling them that 2017 will be the time of great consciousness shift?
Look, I get a lot of different information, some from children, some from adults, that are talking about an event. They're not necessarily saying it's going to be 2017, but we are leading or in a process of this shift happening. We're in it right now. We're in this process of awakening. Look at the people that now are basically challenging governments. Look at the corruption that's being highlighted. We're being shown what's actually going on finally, and people are getting it. So that's the process before, we get to a point perhaps where there is an event that helps us shift into this new awareness. How that's going to unfold, I don't know. Some Some of the children talk about a new Earth. Some of the adults talk about a new Earth. Their understanding of the new Earth is different. Some believe the new Earth is in a different frequency, and that when we reach a certain frequency, we will be part of the new Earth. And that may very well be the way it is. I don't know. I think there's just too much confusion. But certainly I believe the new kids coming in, and a lot of the older starseeds, some people say to me, I've always felt different, etc., similar profile, and they're in their 60s or their 70s. So I don't think it's just in the last few generations. I think this has been building up over the last century, very likely, because what I believe is going on is the more that we become technologically advanced, the more that we are dangerous in terms of the galactic community. And they're basically saying, look, we've got a 3-year-old with a loaded gun here. We've got to make sure that 3-year-old grows up really fast, so that they don't use this gun in the wrong way. If they're going to be part of the community, our community, they've got to wake up fast. So I think that there are people around the planet that have been given, have a mandate and have a mission, and it's all timed. There is a time link to it, or it's time coded. And one of the ladies, many of the ladies and gentlemen that are doing the scripts, they say, why is it I can't understand them? And one lady in regression asked that question, and what she was told was that it was time locked. So I suspect that this information, these protocols, the understanding is waiting for us to that point where we are, if you like, upgraded or ready for it, whatever that means. And in a way, I feel like, we're the old computer with the old programming. When we get switched on, which may very well be part of our genetic part of the junk DNA that we still don't fully understand, when those different parts of the genome get switched on, it's going to be like a new supercomputer. Well, a supercomputer like that, we're going to need new software. And I think that a lot of the downloads, the programs, the scripts, all these compressed files, and what the children are learning are going to be when we can actually process through the supercomputer all the new information of being multidimensional. Let's face it, we're going to be operating in a completely different way. If we actually are becoming telepathic, for example, we've got to know how to assess that, how to judge it, how to manage it in a whole new way to what we're doing right now. So we're going to need the software to help us to do it, and I think it's there. It's waiting for us and waiting for the right time. That's how I understand it. And look, I've no idea whether I'm right. That's just one of the ways I logically look at what would need to happen for us to go from a limited, very limited way of looking at our reality to one where we are multidimensional in nature.
Okay, but there's a lot of people that would be kind of skeptical about this whole thing. I mean, a lot of people would hear this 2017 consciousness shift. I mean, you're not willing to give an actual time period, and I respect you for that, because events on a timeline, they're not based on when, they're based on what, cause and effect and all. But this whole 2017 thing, nonetheless, is going to cause a lot of people to say, oh, my God, not this again. We've been down this road before. Here we go again. I mean, there's people that have talked about consciousness shift in the past that, well, did not happen. Like 3 good examples, Greg Braden, David Icke, and Ian Zell Lungold. At some point, like in the 90s, they all talked about how by the 2012 end of the Mayan calendar, winter solstice date of 12/21/2012, there would be a big consciousness shift, and the Earth would start spinning in the opposite direction in conjunction with that consciousness shift. Well, that did not happen. George Kavaslis talked about how on the March 3rd, the time period between the December winter solstice of 2012 and the March 23rd equinox, March 22nd maybe it was, in 2013, the spring equinox would that equinox would be the day when we would ascend into 5D Earth. Well, that did not happen. And Alex Collier, he talked about in the early 90s how December 13th, 2013 would be when we would ascend into 5D Earth. Well, that did not happen. And last but not least, Andromeda Council contactee Tolek, he talked about how January 2014 would be when we would ascend into 4D Earth on the way to 5D Earth. Well, that did not happen. Well, why were all those people wrong? Well, the shorter answer is because we were not on that timeline, and the ultimate reason as to why we were not on that timeline is because the creator gods at the top decided it wasn't time for it to happen at that period. Well, does it concern you that maybe the same thing might happen in the 2017 time period, or do you think maybe no, this is going to be different? This isn't going to be like those other times.
Look, I've got a very skeptical side, even if people may equate my open-mindedness to gullibility. The way that I look at it is that what I'm sensing is it's like the 100th monkey. You need a certain percentage of humanity to get to a certain place before there is a change. What I will say to people, the evidence that something is definitely happening is more and more people right across the globe are waking up and changing their lives. And I mean in major, major ways. I mean, these are often from all different walks of life, from lawyers to doctors to, physicists and to, the average lady and gentleman in the street, where they are having an experience which literally redirects their lives. They suddenly find that they're more aware. They find that they are really completely focused in a new way of living. They change their diet. They change their lifestyle. They are completely focused to understanding more of the nature of reality, or origin of the species, or conspiratorial stuff. And these literally can be overnight transitions for them. So for them, it's all started. And this has been particularly accelerating in the last few years. So I believe that 2012 and around that date was about a shift for those that are ready. And that's what I've been seeing happen more and more in the last few years. It wasn't about the whole planet, because I don't think the whole planet was ready. And I think it's very foolhardy to give any dates, because I think a lot depends on choices. It depends on us as a species, as a whole, saying, look, we're now ready to make this shift and make this change. And I don't think that you can be finite on that, because I think a lot is dependent on so many other things. So it would be not logical to do that. I certainly think, though, we are in a process of a consciousness shift. And where the tipping scale of that will be is hard to know. But what I do find with the children, that they don't read books on this. They don't listen to talk shows. They're coming with information that has a clarity and a purity that adults cannot have after being through the educational systems and from what they've read or what they've been exposed to. The children have got a lot clearer perspective, I think, on what's going on, and they are talking about this at 4 years old, talking about the new Earth. I had a woman from Turkey send me her 4-year-old drawing, which was showing a script and a planet, and saying, Mum, that's the new Earth. And when her mum tried to ask her more about it, she said, I can't tell you anymore because it's a secret. Now, this isn't stuff that a 4-year-old talks about. Believe me, I know. I'm a mum of 3 kids, and I've got 4 grandkids. I know what they normally talk about. I had another 6-year-old talk about the new Earth to her father in Sydney. These children, a 7-year-old talking about the new Earth at 7 years old in Queensland. Now, these are children, none of them have communicated. They're all saying a similar thing. Now, whether or not they are all being programmed by some intelligence to get us to believe in fairyland, I don't know, because we can't for sure know. But it is very, very interesting that from different parts of the globe, including that 9-year-old from Northern Europe, is talking about this time period as being hugely significant in the waking of humanity. I'm afraid that, for me, it's listening to the kids makes the most sense to me. But at the end of the day, none of us really know, and we just have to look at what is coming to us from various sources and decide whether or not that resonates with us or not.
Yes, use your own discernment in so many ways. It's especially true when it comes to ET work and UFO work, because there's been a lot of misinformation thrown around in that regard. One question I think I should ask: a lot of people would caution against talking about near future consciousness shifts. I mean, many people would say, well, yeah, there's going to definitely be a shift because, I mean, for one, Pluto is in Capricorn. Astrologically speaking, the last time Pluto was in Capricorn was the American and French Revolutions, and that symbolizes the tear down of anything that's destructive and hindering consciousness expansion. And it's happening now and will be until around 2023. But others would say, well, regardless, you shouldn't talk about, excuse me, about how we're going to have a near future consciousness shift because that's going to cause people to have a couch potato attitude and sit back and do nothing and think, well, I don't have to do jack shit because the ETs from above, they're going to come and save us. I mean, would you say that it's a bad idea to talk about near future consciousness shift because it might cause people to act like couch potatoes, or do you think, no, people aren't that lazy and stupid, they'll definitely pull through?
My feeling is that a lot of people sense on some level that things have to change, that we're in a world of chaos now, and it looks like it's going to get worse before it gets better. Usually through any kind of change, major change, I think that a lot of people get very frightened. I think that, they get very fearful about the future, their families, their children, and whatever. So to have hope, to have a sense that there is something ahead that is going to be a future for not only ourselves but for our children and grandchildren, I think is really, really important. I think, you can get so bogged down with conspiracies and the dark stuff and the fear to the point where you think, well, what's the point? And I'm actually saying to people, I think there's a very big point. And the point is that I am seeing personally in the many parents that write to me about their children and what the children are telling me and what young adults and young teenagers are telling me, that we have got something ahead of us that, although it's going to be very difficult and very challenging, like anything when there's change, ultimately is going to provide a new way of living, however that is. And I think people need to know about that. I think it's important they understand that there is a light when things get dark at the end of the tunnel, and I don't think that makes people lazy. I think it actually gives them a reason for keeping going when everything gets really awful and very difficult. You know what I mean? It's like when you're in boarding school and and you're missing home and you think, how long is this going to last? And you think, well, there's only 2 more weeks and I'll be home again. It's the same kind of feeling. You've got to know that there's something that is worthwhile at the end of all this, this really painful existence on this planet for so many people. And when we're seeing that those that run this planet really don't care for you and me. They don't care a stuff. They are there for self-serving reasons. And, it's when we grow up when we realize that. And we need to know that we can do something, that there is a chance for change and a chance to make this planet into a better place. And, I believe, have agreed to come here to help with that change. So, yes, it's important to have hope. And I believe that the children are giving us hope, because I honestly don't believe all these souls that are coming in, that are helping to wake us up, have come for a waste of time.
Yeah, and related to this issue of Reiki Master, in my interview with him, he talked about how there will actually be ETs visiting the Earth in the 2017 time period in their big ships and such, and people are going to see that. And he seems to present it in such a positive way. But a lot of people would say, well, there's nothing positive about that because, well, we all remember when Orson Welles did the War of the Worlds radio show broadcast in the I think it was the late 1930s. He frightened a lot of people. He said the Martians are invading. A lot of people believed him. Over 1 million people believed him. And then before long, there was chaos in the streets, and everybody went insane. And, Orson Welles got into a lot of trouble for that. And people would say, well, it's going to be that's nothing compared to what's going to happen in 2017 when these ETs show up in their big ships and scare the hell out of everybody. The chaos in the streets is going to be a zillion times worse because people are like the animals that graze by the river in Africa. Jordan Maxwell has used this analogy to describe humans. They're like the animals that graze by the river waiting to get pounced on, and the lions and other predators just start running at them, and then the they outnumber the predators like 100 to 1, but yet they all run away in fear of the beasts and the other animals grazing do, and humans are no different, as evidenced by what happened with Orson Welles' broadcast. So in the event that ETs do show themselves, well, first of all, do you believe that that will happen when the event, so to speak, happens, be it 2017 or whatever, and do you think that humans will go crazy like that?
Look, anything is possible. And, I've got no way of knowing for sure any more than anybody else. But certainly there's a percentage of people that believe and feel they've been shown precognitively that they are going to show themselves in a very overt way in the next few years. But again, like everything else, there's no way of proving that until we see for ourselves. If it happens, then I think there is going to be certainly a percentage of the population globally that is going to be in shock because they haven't been told the truth by these covert agencies. The truth embargo has has meant that the majority of the public has been lied to for 60, 70 years or more about the reality that we've been visited all through our history, etc., and that we are definitely interacting with certain species at the moment. So for a lot of people, it's going to be a huge paradigm shift. But the children and the younger generations, I think, will take it as a norm because already in schools, they're being taught about it in certainly, as far as I know, in Britain. There's programs around it. All the cartoons these days seem to have aliens in them. The children are going to be fine because a lot of them already know that this is on some level, this is a reality anyway, and quite consciously. So the kids and the younger generations, I think, will be absolutely fine with it. The ones that will struggle are those that are stuck in a particular either religious paradigm or an educational, sociological paradigm, or, the primitive cultures or the more indigenous cultures won't have a problem because they've been brought up with it. They know already that they are being visited by star beings and whatever, so they aren't going to have a problem. It's going to be the Western mind, the Western programming that is going to make it hard for some people of the older generations that are going to really struggle, and those that have very entrenched religious beliefs or, as I say, educational, scientific beliefs are the ones that are going to struggle the most. And I will have to tell you, the ones that I find struggling the most to come to terms with their experiences are usually those that have been to higher education. Scientists, lawyers, doctors, those within that kind of higher educational perspective are very programmed into a certain mindset that makes it very hard for them to own their multidimensional awareness. When they start seeing things, they generally will think they're going crazy, rather than maybe I am actually seeing what I'm seeing. And many of them, I think, they are the ones that are really going to struggle when finally their paradigm is shown to be. And some will, I think, will just go into denial and don't want to know. But that's each soul's journey, isn't it? For some of us, it will be a more easy ride, and for some of us, that will be part of their soul learning and soul's growth. So however it unfolds, I think we've all chosen to be here, and we've chosen the journey with the exposure to that reality.
Right, Ryan, I got a question in the chat room I might as well ask just for the hell of it. Sean Cohen says, chemtrails are necessary for the aliens who live on Earth, some people would say. Could this be true? David Icke even entertained that idea in one of his 9-hour talks, saying that the Archon control system uses chemtrails to turn this world into an Archon world that suits their bidding. And Alfred Weber has talked about how chemtrails can turn people into robots, so to speak. Don't have time to elaborate on that. I'll let you talk about this. But do you know anything about whether or not it's true that chemtrails are to turn this world into an Archon world?
Look, I've got no evidence to support that hypothesis. I can't say one way or another, but I do know that it is affecting our health, and that is also something that's an agenda from the those that wish to depopulate the planet, and that would be one good way to do it. And I don't, and some of them may very well be influenced by some of the archons or those other energies to do this. I mean, anything can be on the table, but to prove that is a whole new ball game, and I think people need to be very discerning in what they choose to believe or not believe.
Speaking of believing and not believing, there are some that believe that the idea that they want to depopulate the Earth, as you just said, is somewhat misleading because that only applies to some factions within the Archon control system and the New World Order. It has been said by others that at least half, as a matter of fact, at least half of the Archon and New World Order factions, they would prefer not to depopulate the Earth. They would actually rather microchip us if they had the chance, all of us, without killing many of us, and to take away our free will, so they can turn us into a cosmic war machine, a galactic empire, as part of a cruel plan to colonize space for the galactic empire. And I can certainly go along with that because the draconian reptilians, they are a warrior race. Do you know anything about them doing that, trying to microchip us to turn us into a cosmic war machine to take over the galaxy, and they'd rather not depopulate us to make that possible?
Look, anything is possible. I mean, the trouble is we're going on very limited information, and my concern is for all of this information, where does it actually come from? That this is the problem, because whether it's whistleblowers or whether it's people that are tuning in or doing their own research and working out the way that they see it or whatever. I think you've got to have a lot of evidence to actually support something like that. But I do know that certainly the covert governments are working with a lot of the genetics of humans, and we know we've got the super soldier as part of the MyLab, the military orchestrated abductions and what have you. And certainly they're looking at super soldier programs. And certainly I believe if we're not careful, we could be chipped for control. We could be chipped for other things as well. I mean, anything is on the table, actually. But how much of it is our own fear and how much of it actually has veracity, that's the difficult one, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And you said tampering with our genes, and just so you know, we got about half an hour on the show. We may want to stick with this entire subject because this is a pretty broad topic I'm about to discuss, because it'll encompass the agendas of different species of aliens. Well, first of all, it has been said by many that the reason almost all the alien species that are influencing our reality on Earth, be they whatever race, Nordic, reptilian, gray, whatever, the reason they are interested in us is because humans are genetic royalty. We have so many different extraterrestrial species in our genes, in our DNA. And there's an article on in5d.com that I once did a special show when I was the only person on the show, did it myself, called Characteristics of ET Races. Use that article as a guide on in5d.com. It talked about how humans, we came from the Lyra star system originally, and the Lyra species of aliens that come from Lyra, there was like a whole slew of different extraterrestrial species that were conducive to Lyra. And I'm thinking, well, that kind of would make sense, because if we are a hodgepodge of different genes that makes us genetic royalty, it only makes sense that Lyra would have many different species of ET in it. But the whole issue of aliens being interested in us because we are genetic royalty, do you believe that is true? And then after you give your take, we'll be more specific in regards to what specific ET groups want to do.
Well, certainly some of my research suggests that we are unique in some ways, and that there are a lot of different species very interested in us and our potential. And that sort of resonates with me to a certain extent. But what's actually going on around, planet Earth, and what seems to be, as some suggest, a war for planet Earth, one young 16-year-old who remembers his past lives, also said to me that what's going on in the galaxy is more like Star Wars than Star Trek, put it. And he did believe that we were, over the millennia, being, if you like, controlled by certain reptilian species that were keeping us controlled through the fear frequency. But he did say there are many other enlightened star species that were helping us to raise our frequency, raise our awareness, because the higher the frequency that we go and the more that we connect to who we really are and our potential, then they actually will have no control. So it seems that when you're on a lower frequency, as this other scientist told me, they actually can keep you controlled, and the lower frequencies or the fear frequencies. So as long as we continue to buy into that matrix, then we will stay there. but as if we are prepared to work at being of a higher vibration, of a higher frequency, that means our thoughts, the way that we look at one another, the way we treat one another, the more that we're working with that frequency. Some will use the term, cliched as it is, the love frequency, and become more aware. In fact, they don't have any control over us, these species, anymore, and we are actually then reaching a place of what some would call, whether it's ascension in New Age terms, or it's just that we no longer can be controlled because we've become a different species that is not available to them anymore. And that is similar to the shamanic journey, which says that to become a shaman, you have to transcend your fears to become fully aware of and operate in a multidimensional world. That's exactly what the shaman has to do. And maybe that's exactly what we've got to do, is to not allow the fears, those third-dimensional fears of being, that we are being fed continuously on this planet, and realize our true potential and go to that other place, which we all have the potential to do.
Okay. One other subject specific to genes, maybe you can tell me if you've encountered anything in your work about this subject, the whole Anunnaki thing. A lot of people seem to be confused over what the term Anunnaki means. Some would say, well, that's the extraterrestrials from Nibiru that Zecharia Sitchin talks about. And by the way, I could get into a whole story about how I know that Zecharia Sitchin was right and how Nibiru does exist and the Anunnaki are there. But I've done it on other shows. I'm not going to do it now because it'll take away time. But the issue here is a lot of people would say, well, that's kind of misleading because that's only one faction of Anunnaki. The term Anunnaki refers to a hodgepodge of extraterrestrial species, both good and bad, that can best be described as the children of a universal geneticist entity known as Anu, and the Anu from Nibiru that Zecharia Sitchin talked about, who was the father of Enlil and Enlil. That's a sort of a microscopic version of the universal Anu entity, and Enlil and Enlil, George Kavassis has told me about, has to do with the balance of the male energies. Like a lot of stories, Cain and Abel, Enlil and Enlil, that is a balance of the male energies. And he even said we have a second sun in our solar system that we can't see because it orbits exactly opposite the sun of where the Earth is, at the same speed as the Earth is, and that is to balance the male energy because the sun's a male energy planet. But I'm kind of digressing there. The point is the whole Anunnaki being the children of a universal geneticist entity, and also the Anunnaki from Nibiru being one faction to that. And even actually Andromeda Council Contact, he said it's not the Reptilians who control the Illuminati, it's the Anunnaki from Nibiru who control the Illuminati. And I can kind of go along with that because the Illuminati, they're unique because of their genetics. They're bloodline Illuminati families because of their genes, and the Anunnaki, they're a universal geneticist entity, so that might make sense. So the whole idea of the Anunnaki and what maybe the people that you've worked with, have they said anything about that species of extraterrestrials?
Oh, look, apart from my own research, this is really what this teenager was basically saying, is that it is, whether it's the Draconians or the Reptilians, that primarily seem to be the ones controlling Earth, but there may very well be an intelligence beyond that is controlling them as well. We've come down to this planet to live in a duality, and we are here to understand and feel and understand what a duality means, and also the challenges that go with that. So, in that sense, this is all part of our human experience. If you want to take on all these different, more complex understandings, then if they resonate with you, then that's fine. But I will say this, and it may not fit with a lot of your viewers, your listeners, should I say, but when I was talking to this 16-year-old about his understanding of reality and, how this all works, and he actually said, Mary, actually what you believe will be what happens for you. So we are all creating, to a certain extent, through our beliefs, what we will experience. And when I asked him about something which was to do with the soul catchers, or this web that some are saying, is around the globe, that catches your soul and sends you back to, re-experience, and you're trapped, if you like, within that matrix or whatever. And I said, what's your understanding of that? Is that something that is real, or in terms of how you understand it or whatever? And I know there are a number of people that have talked about this. And he said, Mary, if that's what you believe, then that's what you will create. So all I can say is, for me, I'm going to create something in my understanding that isn't going to be like that. But what I will say to you is that in my experience, getting back to what he was telling me about the catching of the souls, or this web, was when I do past lives and people move on through into that space where they go to their soul, if you like, their soul family or whatever. There is no suggestion of any webs or anything that are covering the planet. So taking that one step further, all this information that's coming in could come from a number of sources, and a lot of it could be true, or it actually could be made up quite nicely by those that want to keep us in that space of feeling disempowered. So again, if it fits for you, then you're creating that as your reality, and if it doesn't resonate, then you find what information resonates. And we all change in our truth. What I believed at 20 isn't what I believed at 30, and so on. And I think the more you learn, the more you grow, and the more that you learn to discern what fits for you. And it may not be today what you believe next year or next month.
Beliefs do change, and your beliefs manifest what your reality will be. One question I should have asked you earlier, but I forgot. Fukushima, it has been said that by Alfred Weber, in my interview with him, he talked about how Fukushima, it is a global extinction event. Even though you live in the southern hemisphere, you won't eventually be able to escape it entirely because, the Pacific Ocean is totally screwed. But other than that, we're all totally screwed. Alfred actually used that phrase, totally screwed, in my interview with him in regards to the extent of Fukushima's global extinction level. But it has been said there is light at the end of the tunnel, and the light at the end of the tunnel is that consciousness shift that you've talked about, in like 2017 or whatever it will be. Can you confirm that Fukushima is the number one reason, the global extinction event that it is? Is it a global extinction event, and is it the reason why the number one reason why we'll have a consciousness shift?
Look, it may be one of the major events. I don't know whether it's going to be that. It may very well be other events as well, and certainly it will be a part of the catalyst. I think. What I will say, though, is that one of the interesting things the 7-year-old talked about going to the new Earth. She was explaining that we'll be taken there to learn new skills and then come back and fix up the pollution on planet Earth. And interestingly, the 16-year-old told me that he has already awareness to create technologies that will help with pollution. And that also goes with maybe fixing up the damage, the ecological damage that has been done with such things as Fukushima and others. So, I think that it is about acknowledging we're at a crisis on our planet for sure. There's no question that we are. On every level we're in crisis. But, often, it's always darkest before the dawn. And I know that's a very, sort of a cliche in some ways, but I honestly believe that we've come to help with not only going through this, but actually we have the abilities, even if we're not aware of them yet, to actually sort this planet out one way or another. And it may be that we'll learn to use our abilities in a whole new way so that we can do that. But certainly it may very well be part of the catalyst, for sure.
Hope so, and hope we do have that shift soon. By the way, we got a little over 15 minutes left. I'll let you know exactly as soon as I finish talking here, but you can finish on this subject if you want. The whole process of when someone has an abduction-contact experience that involves abduction, I mean, there's many different varieties of it happening, many different extraterrestrial species that they would encounter after the abduction. It's not always a Benny and Barney Hill type experience, and sometimes they have their bodies taken on the ship, sometimes no, their bodies stay behind and their soul is taken on the ship. So, and also the question of what happens when they're on the craft, the alien craft, and did they travel through time, as a matter of fact? Well, in a sense they did, because they don't remember time, or maybe the ET's time travelers in some regard. So the whole process, the whole procedure that happens when a person is abducted to the time they're in the ship to the time that they return down to Earth. You have 15 minutes to discuss this issue. You can elaborate all you want. You got 15 minutes on that process and the different ETs and how they go about it.
Right. Carte blanche, hey? In terms of the whole encounter, the broad scenarios are that it's multi-level in terms of interaction, where somebody initially is taken in a trance state, because from what I understand, that if we were fully conscious when we're taken, the reaction would be one of general terror, of fear, and a lot of these little greys are very fragile, and if you bash one of them, you're going to damage them. So they have to do what is necessary to take you in an altered state so that doesn't happen. On the craft, there are a multitude of things that seem to go on, not only from genetic material being taken, some to do with certain breeding programs, but also what I would call an educational program. And this is where even as the young children of 3 and 4, they have remembered, adults have remembered being taught higher physics right through to the origin of the species. They're being told about space-time. For example, let me give you some of the types of things that that they actually experience. For example, in terms of what they are learning is a huge range of different topics. And to give you some examples of that, and I'm just trying to find where this is some of the abilities, for example, of these children. For example, the profile. They recall being on spacecraft, educated by ETs, many past life memories where they're not human, have access to knowledge and information they've not consciously learnt. They feel a sense of mission and purpose, often feel alien to this planet. They're intelligent, intuitive, telepathic, for example, perceive spirits, have healing abilities, some communicate with animals, have a strong connection to their non-human family, for example. Some of the things that they're taught on the craft are the non-linear nature of time and space, the awareness and connection to all sentient life, levitation abilities, skills off-world, understanding spatial geometry of thought, how to operate in a multidimensional reality and states of consciousness, how to communicate, interpret, and interact with interdimensional and other non-human intelligences, out-of-body training, telekinesis, telepathy and mind melds, multidimensional ecology, manifestation, directed thought and emotion, healing abilities and working with energy, true history of man's origins, informed of their own star heritage, time travel and teleportation. These are just some of the programs, and when an 8-year-old tells you he goes up on the craft with 2 of his school friends, they go into a room where he says he uses his brain waves to create things in the air with others, not only human, but some he said that are humanoid, but they were different in terms of their eyes were not human. So he was aware he was working with other species in these kinds of educational forums. They're often taken to their home planet where they are reminded of their origins, for example, and also to be given encouragement when they find it so hard down on planet Earth because it is such a dense and difficult place to be. As I say, it's a very difficult boarding school down here. So these are some of the things that the children actually consciously remember. Young adults can consciously remember them often, but older generations, often this is kept from them, I think, to protect them, and also because with each generation there is more openness to the fact that this is a reality. So each generation becomes more accepting of an extraterrestrial reality. So what I'm seeing is, from these different intelligences that are assisting this planet at least, is that they want humanity to wake up. They want humanity to realize its true potential, and they are showing us this potential. And evidence of this is in a lot of the children being born in, and I talk about this in my presentations, where children in China have been filmed changing the nature of DNA in a petri dish, moving things with their mind, have been able to remote influence. All of this is being recorded in China's Super Psychics by Paul Dong. A lot of these are referenced in my presentations. There are children I've now discovered, not only in Mexico, but in India and other places where these children can, if you like, perceive from various parts of their body. So when they're blindfolded, they can actually read books. They have been able to, I saw a little Indian boy on a program that was talking about psychic children. He's about 10 and he was blindfolded. They gave him a Rubik's Cube and he actually managed to put it, correct all the different colors in the space of 2 minutes fully blindfolded, for example. So I've seen Mexico children read through their feet fully blindfolded. So the evidence is not imaginary. The evidence is out there. One little boy talking to his mum saying, you know, Mum, when I put my hand up in front of the television, I can see right through my hand to the television. There have been children in Russia, one of them, a young lady, who they said that she had X-ray eyes. This is what I'm seeing evidence of. They often are talked about as psychic children, but they are around the globe, and these children are talking about their other lives. They're talking about why they're here. They're talking. One little 9-year-old is talking about she can heal water through a star frequency, for example, and her parents have said the water tastes differently afterwards. And if you think this all sounds a bit bizarre and a bit strange to you, or even unbelievable, then I would point you to Masaru Emoto, a Japanese scientist that sadly died only recently, that was showing that with water, that you can change the programming of water through certain frequencies, whether it's music or prayer or intent. And he's proved it. The images that he's produced in his book Messages in Water and many others show that this is quite possible. So, you know, there are things that we have seen as extraordinary that actually are not extraordinary anymore, that are actually, I believe, where we're going. And one of the things this 9-year-old told me, that she said human beings are actually amazing, but they have amazing potential. Remember, this is a 9-year-old that doesn't even speak English. I was working through an interpreter. And she said, but they have to start believing it. They have to start believing that they have this potential. And you've been taught not to believe in your potential. You've been taught that you're only any good once you've read the books and you've got the degrees and all the rest of it. But the truth is that a lot of the knowledge that we have or we're born with is programmed out of us. And this young lady said the schools program you out of your light and out of your knowledge and awareness. And a lot of people tell me they have information they've never consciously learned. And part of the reason they've understood it is because of the downloading that they've had from the craft or on the craft that has told them the truth about who we are, where we're from, and what is actually going on. And again, I can only say that when you get this from really small children and young adults that have not been yet exposed to the more darker third-dimensional matrix, I believe that information has more integrity than a lot of the other information that is out there, simply because, as I say, they don't watch talk shows and they don't read books in this. This is coming in with a purity. So having said all of that, you know, going up on the craft is multidimensional education. Apart from the fact they are definitely doing different genetic experiments to create new programs to help with us understanding, if you like, giving us the abilities to understand more of our multidimensional nature. And by that I mean is that we will be able to do this as well. This isn't just for the kids. That as we wake up, and I think that we, you know, the frequencies are there. The information is there every time you listen to or see a crop circle, or you listen to a star language, or you open up to that part of you that's more aware. You are raising your frequency. And every one of us that's listening, and the ones listening to this program, you're listening to a frequency, you're listening to something that is raising your frequency, whether you're aware of it or not. And what I'm asking you to do really is to trust yourself and trust your inner knowing, because ultimately that's where the gold is. You know, trust what you have within you, because every soul has everything it needs when it comes to this planet, and you're just told that you haven't. Well, actually, I believe it's the other way around. They're afraid that you're going to find out that you actually do know, but you've got to learn to trust it. So having said all of that, I hope it's made some sense to everyone, but that's just a part of what I'm finding I'm not asking you to believe any of it. What I'm asking you to do is to listen openly and decide what makes sense to you. And that ultimately is the most important thing of all. I think that's about it, really.
All right, thanks. We do have some time left, enough time for another question here in the chat room. What about these black-eyed children people say are aliens? Well, before I give you the chance to talk about this, Donnie Gilson, a couple of weeks ago, I had him on my show. He talked about how he once saw Joe Biden, American vice president. His eyes were black during Obama's State of the Union address. For a brief moment when he looked at Biden, his eyes were jet black. And David Icke talked about how he, when had an encounter with British Prime Minister Ted Heath when he used to be, I think, the spokesman for the Green Party. David Icke was British Prime Minister Ted Heath. He saw him in the makeup room and he saw his eyes turn jet black, and he was like, "Whoa, what is this?" And then so many years after the fact, he talked to someone who said he saw British Prime Minister Ted Heath in the woods with a lot of people circled around him, and they were doing a ceremony, and during the ceremony, Ted Heath shapeshifted into a reptilian alien, although Donnie Gilson said, "I don't think that all black-eyed people are necessarily reptilian aliens. It just has something to do with demonic possession." But specifically this question here, what about these black-eyed children who people say are aliens? What do you think they are? You have 4 minutes if you want to take all the time to discuss this.
Look, I've read about them as well. All I can say is that it could be a number of different things. Certainly, I think we have the ability to shapeshift into our other genetic forms. This is what I've been told. So if you have within your DNA certain genetics of various species, I think we ultimately will have the ability to choose which form we want to be ultimately. But with what is being perceived with some people where they've seen somebody shapeshift into a reptilian or something like that, it could very well be that they've been overshadowed by some entity or whatever as well. And I know that is certainly a reality, and it may be the case there where some are controlled by certain entities, and if you're overshadowed sufficiently, your whole face can change, and even to the point where you will literally see the entity itself or whatever. I do know what's interesting is some people have seen this happen in individuals, and this 8-year-old told me that sometimes when he's looking at his school friends, sometimes he'll see them in their human form, and sometimes he can perceive part of their ET aspect, if you like, this kind of dual consciousness where they will, if you like, with his eyesight, he was able to see them shift into part of their ET genetics as well, because for many people here they are hybrids, and it may very well be that as well, that he is a hybrid, and what was being seen was a morphing, or when he was relaxed or in a certain space or certain frequency, that's what you were seeing. And if you have the ability, you can actually see it. So it might be one of a number of things. So, it would be very hard for me to say categorically. But I think this is what we have to understand, is that we are a mix of a number of genetic species, from my understanding, and that the more we become aware of ourselves and our potential, I think the more we will have an opportunity to explore those aspects. Because if we've got those genetics of Nordics or manta or feline beings or whatever it is, we may be able to work with our own genetics to use those abilities from that particular species, which I know sounds extraordinary, but I don't see why it should not be if we've got that within our matrix or within our genetic makeup. And it's interesting about DNA, because my understanding now from Russian researchers is DNA actually works through miniature wormholes to access and tap into information in a multidimensional way, and a lot of people are not aware of that. That that's where our intuition comes from, that's where clairvoyance comes from, that's where telepathy comes from, is our DNA literally is a portal into the matrix. And if you want to look at the Russian research that actually explores this, I can give you the links. So if you go to my website or you contact me. And I think that is as much as I can do on that one.
Thanks a lot, Mary. And we have unfortunately come to the end of the show, so I will tell you the same thing I tell all of my guests. You are a fascinating individual. I'm sure I could have another show with you and come up with other things to talk about, but one of my goals with this show is to get as many different people on the show as possible before I start giving any one specific guest double dips. So I love the material, love your attitude, love what you do. I could certainly have you on again. I regret to say, in all likelihood, not be asking you to come on again, but that's only because I need to give a lot of other fascinating individuals a chance at some glory on my show. But Mary, I will make sure that this show, the information gets spread far and wide. Hopefully the stuff about the near future consciousness shift will not cause people to act like couch potatoes, and I do wish you the best of luck in the rest of the work that you do.
Thank you, and it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, been a pleasure having you. All right, take care, Mary.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Later. Bye. Folks, that is the end of this show. And next week we will have Stephen Bassett on. He is the president of the Paradigm Research Group. I will also be doing a roundtable discussion with him and a couple of other people, and Elizabeth Diamond will be my fellow moderator on that roundtable discussion, but that will be in January. This interview next week with just Stephen Bassett, he'll be on the roundtable, but this time it's just an interview with him. We'll talk about a whole slew of things because Paradigm Research Group, well, it covers a whole slew of things. Without further ado, namaste, take care, enjoy the rest of your trek throughout consciousness. This is Andrew Fisher of Nature of Reality Radio signing off.